what prompted us to do this is that we were a couple of guys who went to the Linux conference out in Europe and the US and other places. And we found that we were starting to bump into the same kind of people. You said hi and took a beer and talked a lot. And yeah, that's good. That's actually exactly why we go to these conferences, to learn stuff and to network, to see the other person on the other side of the email address, because that's mostly what we see on the mailing lists. And well, one of the things was, when you are the same kind of guys, you bump into each other, and you find out, well, we're all in Lund. we live in the same city, or we work just over the freeway from each other. That's a bit silly to go all the way to Barcelona and Prague and just to talk. Yeah, Scotland, just to talk about Linux.
Conferences are fun, right?
Yeah, that's one. Yeah, so that started it, and we had the idea that, well, then let's start our own conference. We could do it. And
how hard could it be?
How hard can it be? And we just said, well, let's do it. Axis had a room, 150 people. We had a couple of guys that are like Linus Valet from Linus, one of the maintainers, big maintainers, the upstream or the Linux kernel. And we all could just do one presentation each. And we started thinking about this. We had lots and lots of lunches, trying to figure out how the heck we're going to do this. And it took a long time just to find out the name. That's standard of every programming thing. Finding out the name for your function, that's a harder thing. Yeah, and it was actually a very big success. We did it, so we had 2 days of discussions and presentations. We had even a small social event sponsored with beer and food. Excellent.
Yeah, and people came. I mean, we have up to 40 people who spent 2 working days at this conference.
Yeah. So, and that was actually the target for the first year was, I think we said 30 people that we wanted to invite. We also said that we were going to invite people. We're going to say, well, you're invited, and then they can in their turn can say, well, I know this guy. This guy, he needs to go to this conference too. And we said, great. We don't have to do any marketing. Because that's one of the things that we want to do. We wanted to do it easy. We didn't want to spend a lot of time to this. One of the other things we wanted to do was we didn't want to charge any money. Because if we started charge money, well, we got to handle that money. That's just a pain.
And you have to be more professional.
Yeah, that's one of the things. Well, if we don't charge for it, maybe it doesn't matter if it's crap. So we made it a free conference that's sponsored by Axis and then Intel. Like I said, that was a very good conference. Yeah, here's my what I should have brought up. So we also said we wanted to keep it simple and small, and we made it local. So we said, yeah, let's take everybody in Lund region. It's Ericsson, it's Sony, it's Axis, Intel was big there, lots of other companies. Yeah, people from the university. And we also said, since we are kernel developers, let's just focus on kernel developers, because in the end, if this turns out to be something good, well, the rest will come, because they will probably find this very interesting, and we can branch out. We can include stuff that's user space or whatever later on, if we feel that's that's interesting. So this is a picture from the first conference. That's actually 40 people or something like that. This is Linus Valet. We have see the back of here. And yeah, what more should I say here? It's a
laid-back event.
We had really good discussions.
yeah. One of the things we did was that we made it. We had presentations, normal presentations, but we also scheduled a couple of slots for just discussions. Well, that the whole audience could participate in, and we could perhaps iron out and make people understand what the issue at hand was.
Yeah, and also we had this thing where we, since it was such a small crowd, we could ask everybody in the crowd what they were working with and what they did and so on and so forth. So
Yeah.
people actually connected in the crowd as well.
Yeah, so this has started the networking side of it.
And you can do this in a conference of this size.
Yeah.
If you do a conference with 10,000 participants, you will never get an interactive thing. And you never get everyone to have a chance to meet with everyone else. And this is single track. We want it single track. Everyone participates in all of it. It's like no separate one. So it's people sit together for 2 days, and that's valuable. And people like it.
Yeah. One of the things that were big hits were there were actually a lot of people that connected up at this meeting and started to work together. Some of the things were just, ran ut i sanden. What's the English expression? Well, fizzled out. But at least people started to know each other. And it turns out we actually had a lot of Linux maintainers in the crowd. People that actually are responsible for one part of the Linux kernel. So I think we had like almost 9 or 10, I think, which is pretty good for just Lund.
Yeah, this is we forgot to mention that, but this is an awesome region. I mean, we like to sort of include Copenhagen and call it the greater Lund Linux region. Because we're really the sort of the epicenter of Linux development in Sweden and maybe the north part of Europe.
Yeah, so that was quite good. So unfortunately, in 2015, I didn't find any photos of the crowd. This is the last night.
Yeah, this is the stragglers that didn't leave.
Yeah, so.
These people we had to throw out.
But for the 2015, we actually doubled the number of invitees. So we thought, well, we're going for 60 this year. Still the same concept of making it free, making it local. But it turned out we had speakers from Denmark. We had a speaker from, Romania. Yeah, courtesy of Intel. And this guy is from Denmark. So they were starting to branch out, even though we said local. And we got actually some reports on what had happened since the last conference, which was great, because then you could see that, well, the networking, that actually gave benefits. People are starting to work together, even they're different companies. And people could say, well, I had a problem with that thing, and yeah, now it's not a problem because I talked with this other guy. Last year, repeated it again. This picture actually includes 80 people. I counted them. And that's, we added another 30 to the invitee list. Same formula as before. But this year we had, I don't know how many people, but it was like 5 people from Romania, 4 or 5. A guy from the UK turned up, and actually was very good. And yeah, it's still not that big, so we could still have these discussions and talk to each other. Even though I think if you had this picture a bit better resolution, you would have seen that everybody is a bit zoned out. I think it's just after lunch or something. So Um, I had one thing more that I wanted to say, but yeah, I'll probably remember it later on. So, next year, we're going to do it again. You can't really see this logo, but yeah, this year. Yeah, yes, next year, this year. What year is it? Yeah. So, yeah, what I wanted to say was that just after we finished the first conference in 2014, I remember saying to Hans something like, well, I want to do this again, just after the event had ended. And that almost never happens with me, because most often it's like, well, now that's over and done with. I'm going to sleep for a week. But no, it was such a great experience that we all just said, well, we're going for it again. And yeah, we're still there. We had some exchanges of people. We've broadened out to, we started with just 4, and now we're like 5, 6, if you count it. Yeah, so.
When is it?
It's in May. I think it's the 4th and the 5th of May. I'll check that. It is. And one of the things we were thinking about here is that you guys who are here now have the opportunity of putting yourself on a waiting list if you want to go to this conference, because, well, we're here to network, and yeah, we don't just want maintainers. We want people that are interested in the Linux kernel and what can be done. And yeah, so that's one of the things. We don't have any papers with us, but perhaps we could.
We'll put up
we have an URL where you can enter your name, and then we'll, of course, given space, but we will invite you. If you are an active kernel developer, just come and talk to us, and we'll fix you into the other list. But yeah, that's one of the things that we want to do. Pick up a couple of other people that we haven't found during our previous years, since we've been doing it like, well, inviting one person and letting them invite another. So we want to spread out the contact net here. So
A little bit more than word of mouth.
yeah. So that's all I'm going to talk about the conference. Anybody want to pose any questions on that, or come? Yeah, yeah, sure.
Right, I want to.
Yeah.
The question is, for a health conference, you mentioned that it was like 30 people.
Yeah.
And it was kind of more like a discussion group, like 80 people discussion group with
It was. Sometimes it was a bit tricky because it's hard to keep everybody focused. But most of the time, people actually were quite respectful and didn't talk amongst themselves while the discussion was on. So there was a kind of a participation.
So
Yeah.
we limited the instructions and so on. We just mainly asked them, like, we knew about approximately which companies people came from.
Yeah.
And we asked for, like, one representative from that company
Yeah.
to like, introduce a little bit of.
And it's a structured discussion.
Yeah,
So
but
we can
you're pointing to a problem that's going to be quite evident probably this year, because now we're saying, well, we're adding another 30, so 120 people. Can we actually do a discussion with 130 or 120 people? I don't know. But then again, I don't know. I've always felt that, well, we got to try it, and if it doesn't work, then we'll change it.
But people are, since we've been growing this organically,
Yeah.
people are at least comfortable with each other to speak up. So people know it. Other people.
Yeah, that's one of the very important points. That there's nobody that's, yeah, people don't care too much about appearances and stuff like that. Well, the important thing is the technical discussion, and that's, well, if we can just focus on that, we can fix all the rest.
And I think you did it quite well, because it was organized like sessions, started with a presenter, and the last part of it was more open for discussions.
Yeah, that
was actually quite good.
So we, like I said, we've been to a couple of conferences, all of us. So we've seen what works and what doesn't work, and we picked just what we wanted. Right? Yeah.
Have you recorded the sessions from
No, we discussed it quite a lot, but we felt that one of the things that's a problem with the recording is that you actually make people a bit self-conscious, and for some people that's okay. They don't have a problem with it, but for some people that could be a deal breaker. And since we wanted people to present their stuff, even if it was unfinished or dangerous. We had a presentation that would not have been good to record.
Yes.
So yeah. But
just say that and then move on.
yeah, but I can. Yeah, I can. No.
But one of the points is also to grow speakers.
Yeah.
To get people to get sort of in a relaxed atmosphere present.
Yeah.
The first time.
One of the first things that we said when we were meeting out in the LinusCon Europe context, we said, well, why aren't you taking this discussion? You would have been much better than this guy, this German who just read the manual once. Yeah, perhaps. But if you don't have any practice in holding talks, then it could be a bit daunting. So, yeah. So, right. Any more questions, or shall we move into the next? You'll have to do fel på mig. What's this? Linux? Huh?
Submitting?
Yeah, submitting. All right. So, just going to do a short walkthrough of a certain patch I said just this December.
And this is what you do in your daily work?
That's one of the things I do in my daily work. Just need to point out that this is my personal process. It might be crap. It might not work for you, but it's what I go through. I'm focusing on the upstream process. I'm not talking about developing C. I'm guessing that you guys know that. Also, you need to know that every maintainer or subsystem maintainer is different. That means they have different rules for everything, and some have more rules and some have less. It's very much a thing that, well, your experience might not reflect my experience, because I might actually know the guy on the other side. Yeah. So just think about that. So the problem we had was that we had a switch, we had a device on the switch, and we have Ethernet packets being sent, but the traffic is not being shared equally among all the devices in the switch. Turns out that this new device that we used got like 20% of the available bandwidth, and the other device got 80%. That's a big problem. It turns out it's quite easy after a couple of weeks to find out that you need to have Ethernet flow control. Ethernet is a low-level protocol, and it actually includes pause frames, a way that the device and the switch can talk to each other. And we found this out because we had a new Ethernet controller and new PHY, an Ethernet PHY. All this is just setting up the problem. So it's all easy if you know how to do it. So this is the patch. Just add two defines to a line in a driver. Yeah, and it took a couple of weeks to find out. Yeah. So, yeah, I am slow. I'm sorry. Okay. So, did I? Yeah. So now we come to the hard part. To create a good commit message, find out who to send the patch to, send the patch, respond to questions, and, well, profit? I don't know. So we start with the diff, and we start with a simple, well, this is a crap message, right? You all can see that. It just says what I added. Well, that's not really what we want. We want to know why, not what. We want to have support for Ethernet pause frames. It's important. And perhaps we should add some more details. Turns out this driver actually supported like 3 or 4 different chips. And then we needed to go through the documentation, read it, verify that this mode actually worked in all of them, and it did. And so we say that. And I also say, well, we tested on this one. The documentation says it will work with the others. I haven't tested it. We need to tag it so the maintainers can grab out the subject header and see, well, is this for me or what actually is touched? They should not have to parse the patch themselves. So we add patch to make it very clear. This is a patch. There's also lots of automated scripts that will take that and put that into a database and a website and all the stuff, or even automatically compile it. So let's help it out. It's in the network subsystem, and it's a PHY, and it's actually this specific driver. We also need to sign it, because this is the way that the Linux kernel tracks who is actually responsible for code. Because this says that I have certified that this code is GPL v2, I have the copyright for it, nobody else, and my company is okay with that. All that is in this line of code, well, of this signature. And that's very important to track, because there has been some times earlier when this system wasn't in place, where actually SEO said, well, can you prove that you didn't steal this from SEO Unix? Well, prove? No, but let's add this. And then we have a chain of evidence, or at least attestations. So, we'll send out this patch. No, we won't. We will check it first. That's very important. The Linux kernel is very, very, specific on what it allows. White space, formatting, certain functions are not allowed to be used, stuff like that. But they've added this script that can actually tell you what you're doing wrong. So if I had forgotten the signed off by line, that script would actually have told you so. So it says no obvious style problems and is ready for submission. So then we go to who should we send this patch to, because that's not really easy. You have so many subsystems. But this get maintainer script, you can run that on your patch, and it will automatically find out which subsystem maintainer you should send to, which lists, and actually, in some times when you have code that's been changed by another person in just a previous commit, this script will also tell you, well, this guy changed that specific function or that part of the code, you should probably CC that guy too, because he probably knows about this problem or this piece of code, and he should probably say something about it. So, next step is it's a big problem. If you're working on Windows, some people have the Windows email clients only. I'm sorry for your troubles, but yeah, because that's one of the things that the Linux kernel mailing list guys will actually just completely, they won't like that. Because if your email client screws up your formatting and white spacing or mimes and codes your patch, they're not going to like it. And if you do too much of that, perhaps they won't take your patch at all, even if you do it right, because they're busy. And I don't have the time to read that. It was crap before, so it's. But one of the things I always say, test before you send it, because there could be something that you don't know. If you send a patch over, what was it, 200K to me, our company's Exchange server will munge it completely. And I will tell you, sorry, I can't tag your patch because my mail server actually screwed this up. Send me a git pull request. So even we that are Linux developers and use Linux clients, and we still get bitten by the Windows bug. So I sent this out on, what was it? 12th of, no, the 2nd of December. That's strange formatting somebody using. Yeah, TI stuff. But it turns out this guy has actually been doing stuff with this hardware probably, and he agrees with my assessment. Oh yeah, seems that the documentation is correct, and he adds his ACBY, which is a nice way of in the Linux kernel community or the Linux kernel mailing list saying, well, I believe this is okay. This can go in. He has not written the code, so he doesn't sign off. But he will say, well, I have at least looked at it. There's another tag that's reviewed by, that's used for a bit higher level. If you have a big piece of code, somebody can actually say, well, I have reviewed this code. I agree with this design, and that's a better stamp of approval than the ACBY. The ACBY is, well, I have acknowledged this patch can go in. I'm not going to be against it, at least. But
ACBY is sent by the maintainers actually, or someone responsible for the
well,
and reviewed by anybody.
ACBY could be sent by anybody. So, but also the all of these tags, there are some you get to know people. This Andrew F. Davis, he's from Texas Instruments, which is actually the ones the dude that makes that SPI. So I think he knows what he's talking about. And some of the guys will, if Greg Hartman says it's good, hey. If he says it's bad, well, you slink back into your room and rewrite it. And there's all sort of people in between, but yeah. But the thing is, he actually said, well, perhaps you should align those. Yeah, sure. Yeah. I didn't agree, but yeah, well, it looks nicer, so let's do it. And we'll send it again. And then we see patch v2 to indicate that this is the second revision of this patch. It's now, I've added his ACBY to show, because that all of this message is actually going into the Git repository as a permanent record.
You didn't state what you did, what you changed.
No, I didn't. I didn't. There are some rules about this, but the more trivial your patch is, the easier you can get away on not telling you. But yes, I should probably had something in here describing the differences between patch V2 and V1. But yeah, since it's a trivial formatting, I let that go. And no, jump to page. No, thank you. Yeah, so success. Davis Miller accepted the patch on Monday, 5th December. Applied for the net next. Thanks. And that's how it can go. Sometimes it's a bit harder. Sometimes you don't get a reply for months. And that could be really, really, really irritating. But as always a bit, because it's still not in Linux kernel upstream. It's been accepted, but it was too late for Linux 4.9 because that was released on 11th December, or no, rather the patch, the merge window was opened on 11th December of 11th. And that means it will probably get included for 11. So it can take a lot of time. And as a maintainer, I can understand that. There's lots of good description on how to do a submit checklist. This is written by Andrew Morton, who's one of the big maintainers. I don't know who wrote this submitting patches documentation, but it's also very good. Go through that if you're interested. The kernel newbies site is a very good site to start off on in general, but they do actually have all the documentation on how to do stuff and how to set up and build a Linux kernel and get you started. Yeah, that's what I wanted to say about that. Questions, or should I go on to the maintainer stuff directly?
6:20 already.
Yeah, so let's
Maybe we should just while you fix. Has anyone submitted a kernel patch?
Yes.
so yeah.
I think we know most of you. But it's not that big a deal. Send an email on that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just have to
I'm not trying to scare you now. It's
Yeah.
those Linux guys, they don't know. Okay. So what you need to know about being a maintainer is that it's quite connected to the Linus Torvalds release cycle. And it usually starts out with the merge window. This is the current process. They did a lot of different kinds of processing before in 2.4 and 2.6 days. That's all past us. We're into this process now, and it seems to be working quite well. So the merge window, that's when all of the new stuff is added to the kernel.
By the subsystem maintainer.
By the subsystem maintainers. So this is Linus Torvalds, who receives a pull request from a maintainer. And he includes that in his repository. And then we have like 6 to 8 release candidates. RC releases. Okay. Release candidate releases. So just...
Put a question?
Yeah?
Because maybe I think you should explain what a pull request is.
Should I... How many people have worked with Git? Okay. So how many would like to have an explanation of a pull request? One? No. Yeah. Yeah, so let's. Yeah, good catch there. Sometimes I move too fast. The RC releases, they come once a week, most often. And then he usually does a release. So that's about from up to 11 weeks of a release cycle. And that needs to be matched by Linux Next, which is the merge of all maintainers' next trees. So this is another tree that smokes out the differences or the conflicts between all of the sub-maintainers' different trees.
Staging area.
It's a staging area. One of the big things is they actually do a lot of automated builds, tested on a lot of architectures. And the thing is, every change that a maintainer does needs to be included in the Linux Next for at least 1 week. That's the informal rule that I got in my head. It might be different from different people, but for me, that's what I always go for. So this means that to get a change from my sub-maintainer tree into Linus tree, I can only send it to him in the merge window. That's every 11 weeks. And then the change should have been in the Linux Next tree 1 week. That means it's 12 weeks now, at the long end. And one of the things, you can't include new patches in your sub-maintainer next tree during the merge window, because that would screw everything up, because, well, the tree is in complete flux. We don't really know what's happening there. So, for a maintainer, I have my own specific Git repository, and I must make sure that I sync with both the Linus and the Linux Next cycles. Yeah, I usually do this by submitting or having separate branches for Linux Next and for Linus. I haven't really said what my maintainer tree is, but it's actually the CRIS port, which is a CPU that's developed by Axis, or was developed by Axis. There's not a lot of work being done on it, so most often I don't do anything about release candidates, because, well, it's not going to break the CRIS port, and if it does, well, we can wait 12 weeks. It's not a big deal. So that's mostly, long-term maintenance. Alarm. Right. So what I normally do is, I sort my mail into different mailboxes, and one of the mailboxes is actually my CRIS tree mailbox. I reply as fast as I can for trivial patches, or patches that I can just deliver my act by, and somebody else is going to take it in their tree instead. So I can immediately act it, or perhaps I need to say, yes, I will include this in my maintainer tree. But I normally, every other week, I go through these mailboxes. So I have added another 2 weeks of delay, at least. And sometimes, if the patch is a big patch, or I don't understand the patch, because, there's a lot of code in the CRIS port that I haven't written. It's old stuff that was written like 10 years ago, or even 15 years ago. I don't know what that does. So sometimes it takes a lot of time to review and test. My testing is mostly compiling, because one of the fun things about the CRIS port is it can align on bytes. So a 32-bit integer could actually be aligned on every byte if it wants to. And actually, there's no way to force the compiler to align it on 32-bit borders. unless you actually said that this variable is going to be 32-bit aligned. Most other architectures have a compile time switch to the compiler, use non-packed structs, it's called. So insert space in a struct, but the CRIS does not have that. And that usually gives us some interesting problems with people that try to use a 32-bit pointer and say, well, the last 3 bits, nobody's using them because it's all aligned. No, in CRIS. And then it blows up. So that's what I mostly do. And then I include it in my for-next branch, and then that gets automatically compiled and tested by lots of other people.
You add your signed-off tag.
Yeah. So each time I take a patch through my tree, I actually add my signed off by, because I am certifying that the person I got this from has certified that it is clean and and can go in as a patch in the Linux source tree. Then need to check for failures in Linux next. It rarely happens, but yeah. Sometimes I have never done it, but sometimes it might be necessary to drop a patch and say to the patch sender that, well, I couldn't apply this. Please resend. I'll try next time. And then just the week before the merge window, since I got Linus Torvalds said to me that I should do this. Because I sent my pull requests too late on Fridays. So he said, well, do it the week before. So now I do that. When Linus says jump, you jump. So the week before the window, I'd retest, create a for Linus branch and assign tag in Git. It's I don't know if anybody else is using signed tags, but unless you really need it, well, it doesn't really matter. Yeah, but it can verify that that branch has not been changed since I sent it to him. And then I prefer a pull request, and that's mostly just a summary of what's happened in the tree. That's not very much for my area, at least. And then, as the merge window opens, I still pull request to Linus, and haven't really happened either. But if there's any fallout, that's the time to fix it. I sent one pull request once, and he said it was a bit too late, and I said, well, if you broke it, you bought it. Sure. So. And then when the merge window closes, I open up a new for next branch. And then I repeat. But as you see, the maintainer loop is quite long, at least for me. And that also explains why my patch for the Ethernet thing is actually not in yet, because it's still not, it needs to cook in Davis Miller's network tree. And I just wanted to remind you that maintainers are people too, and that means they have their own lives. It's often that you send a patch that you've been working quite a lot with. You know all the things, the circumstances, and the maintainer says, "What the heck is this? Why the heck do you need this? This is stupid." But it's just that they have not been immersed in your problem. So they don't really understand what it is. And that's the thing. You got to remember, it's a person on the other side. Discuss and, be humble. And that's all I'm going to talk about that.